Hello, everyone, and welcome to State of the Realm. We're a Final Fantasy XIV podcast, and this week we're talking about Eureka Orthos, the latest deep dungeon and the hottest topic in Final Fantasy XIV right now. We touched on it briefly last week, going over 6.35, but this week we made sure to get some experts who probably have a more expert opinion on how this latest iteration has turned out. But of course, you still need your host. I'm Mr. Happy, and of course, joining me is Sly. How are you doing over there, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good. You know what? Like, I actually, because I normally don't have the stream up. For the first time, I heard the new music. And that's pretty cat jam.
Yeah, it's made by Popski.
This is my first time hearing.
It's made by Popski.
Yeah,
nice.
that's pretty cat jam. Like, I'm loving it. But I'm doing good. I'm doing good, man. How about you? What's going on?
I'm doing all right. Just staying busy. Final Fantasy and whatnot. Yeah. You know, it's busy stuff. Yeah. But you and I, we're really the guests of this show, because when we have the professionals on, we're just along for the ride. So first, joining us again twice in 1 month, I guess that's this, what's the word I'm looking for? We had 2 Deep Dungeon shows, he's back. Hey, Finn, what's going on?
Hey, what's up? Doing fine. Yeah, I'm back for the second time.
Yeah.
EO, last time we discussed EO before it came out. We said what we thought it was going to be, and now we're going to say what it actually is this time.
And I'm looking forward to it. And joining us for the first time on State of the Realm, another core member of the Deep Dungeon community. And I know that you two are light party mates going into your first day in Eureka Orthos as well. We have Sig. How you doing, Sig?
Pretty good. Glad to be on the show.
I'm glad to have you on the show. I might need to do a few audio adjustments. I kind of rushed us into this because I was behind schedule for the day, but I appreciate both of you choosing to spend your time here and coming on. Really excited to hear. I see that you may have had a disaster on floor 10 behind you. Care to elaborate on what's going on back there?
I feel like every time you're at floor 10, you feel like a disaster has happened in the EO. It's when it comes to first sets in Deep Dungeon, it's about as rough as it gets.
Yeah, I feel that. All right. Well, we got a lot to talk about with Eureka Orthos and the execution of the entire thing. First, real quick, shout out to the sponsors, everyone over on Patreon. Thank you for supporting. You don't have to, you choose to, and we love you for it. So from Sly and I, thank you very much. He normally is the one that gives you this, and he gives you the kissies, of course, as well. Slide him the kissies. There you go. Perfect. All right. And special shout out, of course, to our other regular sponsors, Steel Series and Advanced GG, which there's discount codes for in the chat. Okay. With that, very quick sponsor read. Eureka Orthos. It's been a long time since we've had a new Deep Dungeon to actually talk about in the recent tense, I suppose. And oh boy,
really long time, yeah.
Yeah. We talked about this a little bit. Sig, since you weren't on the last Deep Dungeon show when we were trying to predict, just how does it feel to have something new in the category that you have put a lot of time into up to this point?
Yeah, so I think this is true for both me and Finn. But I've been around the community for like 3 years now doing Deep Dungeon. So for me, at least, this is something that I've never experienced before. I wasn't around when Heaven on High was released or when Palace of the Dead first came out. So this was a completely new experience, and actually getting new content in Deep Dungeon was not really something I'd ever experienced before. I think the closest that I'd ever gotten was when Endwalker came out, and we had 2 new jobs to play with in Deep Dungeon. So that's like the closest thing that I've gotten to experiencing new content in Deep Dungeon.
And I'm sure that I guess we'll talk about it more in general, but at the very least, how was it experiencing that for the first time? And I guess I'll extend that to both of you. Like you said, you've both been around about the same period of time. So I'll extend that to both you and Finn.
Yeah, so it's just a really brand new experience, because even when I came into the community 3 years ago, there are still plenty of people like Meiji and Angelus who had all their resources out there at that point. And we're doing a lot of great work to get people into the content. But coming into this, obviously nobody knew anything. So being able to experience things blind for the first time, even if we were experiencing it in a party, unlike Angelus, who decided to go solo, it was something completely different. And I think especially that first day, it was kind of like it was a pretty magical experience. Finally getting this after years and years of waiting.
Now,
I mean,
both of you being
Wait, Finn has
I'm
to
sorry,
go
ahead.
first, Sly. Patience. Finn?
Okay, I go.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Sly. Yeah, for me, the biggest by far, like new content is great, right? But because for me, it's the same as Sig. I wasn't around when they released Heaven on High and POTD, so I got into the content in Shadowbringer, which means I never played Deep Dungeon with current level toolkits. So for me, this is by far like the biggest difference. Because now finally I get to play the jobs the way they're supposed to, right? Like with all the pieces of the puzzle. So like I agree with everything that Sig said, but for me this is by far the biggest change for the new content. You know, like if they took POTD and they scaled it up to max level, I would have honestly had a similar experience to EO.
I think that's fair. Minus the few things that are different, which we'll talk about a little bit with EO itself.
Yeah. But both of you being part of the Deep Dungeon community, I'm just curious because I want to find this out. What's the most soul-crushing experience you've had in a Deep Dungeon, whether it be Eureka Orthos or POTD?
Why do you gotta do this, Sly?
Well, that's a easy answer for me, at least. I think it's my most famous clip. But in Heaven on High, I was going for the Omni and finishing up with Astro. And on floor 99, I was fighting a Mimic, put down Earthly Star, killed the Mimic with Earthly Star, but pulled a patrol with it. And I had only 30 seconds left. But the exit opened with the Mimic kill. So if I didn't hit the patrol with the Earthly Star, I would have had the clear. And that's something that I've been forever memed about since that day. And I think it took me like 7 more attempts after that, and probably like a month or month and a half until I was actually able to get the Astro clear after that happened.
I don't even want to imagine doing Astro.
It was a great clip, at least. You made a great clip out of it.
Content.
Yeah, everyone loved it, except me.
Well, you're gonna see a recurring pattern there, because for me it was also Astro. I don't really want to call it soul. I don't really want to call it soul crushing though, because it didn't really put me down that bad. But I was on floor 199 at about I don't know 3 minutes maybe to do the floor. So like of course I was not gonna be able to make it. So I was just running around with a bunch of monsters on my ass, you know, checking all the chests. So I decided to take like the right direction. I went like in a specific direction all the way, no chests that were useful. Went back. And then I had at this point maybe I don't know 30 seconds, so I was like going to lose, of course. So then I go back to the beginning, go in the other direction while I'm chatting with the chat, right, and saying like, oh, this run like was very close. And then I'm not even kidding. As my timer hits 0, I check a gold chest. It's a rage.
I knew it. I knew
Yes.
it was coming. Oh,
It wasn't soul crushing as much as it was funny in the moment, but it was a little bit of a despair, you know. But anyway. I'm pretty sure anyone you ask this question to will have an Astro story to tell you.
it's either an Astro story or a running to the exit on final floor. Like those I'd imagine have to be the 2 top contenders.
Yeah, it seems like it's a reoccurring thing. What about you, Happy? I mean, I've seen your fair share of.
I don't know. I don't think I have anything soul crushing because I don't have nearly the experience. I did 1 of Heaven on High, 1 of Palace, and I haven't even finished my EO one because I haven't had time to. So I don't know if any of mine are really soul crushing. If anything, it's been the other way. I've had more cases where it's like I don't know how I made it that far on that run when I was like going like I was doing a practice run before EO came out and I had nothing for like 91 to 100. So I was like, there's no way I'm making it. And then I got to 98 and I had like 10 minutes left and I was like, I don't even know how this happened. It was just like there were all low kill floors and like I got strengths and steals and it was just a kill fest all the way. And I was like, oh, you know what? That went better than expected. I don't have a soul crushing one. I just.
And another consistent thing seems to be like these are runs that y'all know you're not going to make it.
Yeah. Knowing you're not gonna make it
Pretty
takes
common.
some of the soul crush out of it. I do think though. You're like, it's done. I can't do it.
Takes the pressure away too. If you know you're not gonna make it, then you usually play a little better because you know it. There's no pressure. So
Yeah.
That's how I do
And-
Ultimate
and-
Sly.
and-
That's it. We're dying. We're going back to phase 1. And then until you clear, and then you're like, okay, we did it.
And then the thing about POTD in comparison to like HOH and Eureka Orthos, POTD didn't have, well, they had rage, but they didn't have like a oh shit button like storms or a the primals.
Man, Storms is an oh shit
Did it.
button sometimes bites me in the ass. So I don't like, yeah, it is. But when I'm soloing and I think to use Storms, I'm like, am I gonna make this? Am I gonna die when I go to use this? Is there gonna be an AoE on me? And there has been, Sly.
I don't know. Actually, I'd say that you have the same ocean buttons in both, like with chains, right? But I feel like it's easier to get out of bad situations in POTD because, like, the telegraphs won't kill you instantly for like every single monster. Because the storm is nice, but usually if you're in the position where you're like, oh shit, I need to use a storm, you're probably dead in like a second. So
That's how I feel, at least. Yeah. Well, now we've reminisced a little bit about the old ones. We are here to talk about the new one. So, Eureka Orthos, it's been around for about a week and a half now, and you guys have had a decent amount of time to absorb it, understand it. Finn, already, 12, 13 at this point?
13 players, yeah.
There you go. 13 out of the 19 jobs soloed at this point. Sig, I believe you did the one. I don't know that you've been back in to do a second or a third yet.
Yeah, that's right. I did the 1 clear, and I haven't done the higher floors since. But
We'll talk
I've
about
been
that soon. I
watching
believe.
plenty of other people do them. I've been watching Finn do it over and over and over and over.
Yeah, as have I. That's why I lost count. So before we get into the specifics about Eureka Orthos, I want to kind of just open the floor here while I deal with Aloha, who's nipping at my heels right this second, to just give an overall thoughts on the execution of this versus the other 2 dungeons. Now, you could do that from a fresh perspective because this is your first one going in fresh, or you could do it from an overall perspective, gameplay mechanics, bosses, individual monsters, whatever floats your boat. Open floor to just talk about Eureka Orthos at the moment.
That is a very broad question. I don't think I could answer that in like 2 minutes.
You got as many minutes as you need.
I mean, EO's like. So repeat the question. Like, do you want to like any specific information or just like in general?
I guess it's more of a general feeling because I think it's fair enough to say you probably have at this point a general feeling about Palace or Heaven, about kind of a synopsis of how you would feel about those as well. So being a week and a half into Eureka Orthos, how does it just feel to be going through it? How do you feel when you're inside? Just give me an emotion, I suppose.
All right.
Yeah.
So the first thing that comes to my mind is this is the Raiders Deep Dungeons. I think this deep dungeon was made for people that don't do deep dungeons to get into the content, right? That's how it feels to me. I think this deep dungeon is really good. It is a really good modern deep dungeon, but I don't think it's a very good old school deep dungeon, if that makes sense, right? I guess I'll keep it like that simple for now because I will talk for like 50 minutes otherwise, and I'm sure you have plenty of questions later about it. But that's the way I would summarize this deep dungeon right now. And if you're wondering, like, am I having fun? Yeah, I'm having fun. But I think a big part of it is the maximum level kits that I get to play with that I've never played with. So,
Sig,
Yeah,
I believe I know where you're going with this one, Sig, given the video that
Yeah.
you put out.
Yeah, so I think the prevailing emotion that I get from Eureka Orthos is pretty much just disappointment. And I think me and Finn, we have a lot of the same opinions on the direction they took. Or basically we're seeing the same things. But I think our opinions on whether or not that's a good thing, and whether or not that's actually going to be fun and healthy for Deep Dungeon in the long run, I think that's where we differ pretty widely. And I'm sure we're going to cover a lot of it today. But I think just to start out with, that's really been kind of the overwhelming feeling I've gotten. And I'm also just kind of worried in general that in with like Palace and Heaven on High. We've been doing those deep dungeons for years and years now, and we're still doing them. They're still interesting for us, but it's very hard to see that same thing happening to Eureka Orthos. It feels like something that the deep dungeon community and these people that very actively run deep dungeons for years and years, they're pretty much going to clear it. They're going to accomplish whatever goals they have with it. And then I feel like you'll probably see it be set aside pretty quickly in comparison to the other deep dungeons.
I think that's a fair assessment given the overall structure of it. Even I, someone who hasn't gotten my first solo, feel that way, kind of, to some capacity. Like, I enjoy it. I'm having fun when I'm inside it. Nothing to me is as grueling as Palace 1 to 50. I don't think anything will ever match that for me. But floors 1 to 10 come pretty close. I'll say that much at least. Real quick, Sly, I haven't been keeping up. I know you've been going in with a group. You've been largely just taking some time at it. Where are you right now with Deep Dungeon, actually? You're muted.
I was just checking where we were. We are, well, right now, we had to begin our climb again, or descent, I guess, again, because we got to, I believe it was, it was the 74, I want to say. I think it was 74.
I knew it was going to be 71 to 80 before you even said anything.
It was kind of an oh shit moment that we thought we were going to get out of. And what did us in was a bird of Orthos, because we had no idea.
Oh, we
were killing like other shit, and we were like, okay, just save the bird for last. It's probably harmless. No, the fuck it isn't. It killed everyone. We barely touched it, and we were getting to it, and it killed us all.
I'm willing.
That was the.
Yeah, so
no, not.
I almost killed a group
that.
with, I think, the thing that you died to, where somebody got confused and it started casting Revelation. I was like, oh, I'll rescue them out of the Revelation, only to realize there was no ground AoE.
No. So yeah, it did, nobody was even confused at the point. We were just killing other shit, and then all of a sudden it just did Revelation, and we were like, dead. So
yeah.
I've never seen that AoE, that revelation. So it must have been someone that confused and guessed it. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you get confused for 30 seconds, and then it does Revelation until the target. So even if you stun Revelation, it just does it again as soon as it gets out of the stun until that person or the bird is dead. Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, one of my mates I went in with, he's like, oh, that's why you told me to run. I was like, yeah, that's a Phoenix Tank Buster. I know what that does now that I've actually read it. Okay, yeah, that's an I would have thought it would have been the apes. 71 to 80 is pretty much the hardest set out of all of them anyway, so I guess I'm not too surprised.
Yeah, there's a lot of AoE shit that you really can't do anything about. It's LOSable, some of it. I mean, yeah, most all of it is LOSable, but it's just, God, they really want to kill you. Yeah.
And I think that's probably a good place to start off, because the basics of Eureka Orthos are, for better or worse, largely the same. The entry is, you still have 2 save files. God forbid we get more than 2. Mm-hmm. You still, have to go to the spot. They even got rid of the Mordona instance already, because apparently it was causing crashes and issues. So you don't even have to worry about that aspect anymore. And once you're inside, it looks like Deep Dungeon. This is Palace Heaven. But you very quickly realize the direction that they went with in pulling a few monsters, even in the first 10 floors. So I think the biggest point of discussion for this whole video is going to be the monsters and the bosses more than anything else, because those kind of define it. Yeah. So the monsters in Eureka Orthos are pretty much, I would say they're the polar opposites of every monster in Palace and Heaven, especially as you get to the higher floor. They're all pretty durable the whole way through, so there's no point where they're really weak. And they're pretty much all dangerous the entire way through for their attacks, but their auto attack damage is low comparatively as well. I'd say that's consistent the whole 100 floors.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yep.
Would I be
Yeah.
correct in saying that defines the majority of your opinions about Eureka Orthos?
Yeah,
Yep.
so it does have a very large effect for sure. So as you mentioned, uh, in the early floors, very early, starting with like the bombs on like the second or third floor, you kind of really begin to figure out the direction that they took in terms of how they wanted to make enemies difficult in this deep dungeon, where it does like it's point blank AoE, but it's not telegraphed until like the very last second. So there's no way that you would know to get out of it unless you know that it's coming. So essentially, you can already tell at that point that they snuck in some tricky things that kind of require you to either learn with a group as you go along, or if you're solo, hopefully you know these things beforehand, or you're probably going to get blown up in one shot instantly. And that's kind of a trend that continues throughout the deep dungeon, where even on the lower floors and up through the higher floors, all these enemies have these one-shot mechanics with either no telegraphs or very quick telegraphs. So it becomes a situation of you kind of need to know these things before you go in, or you're going to get destroyed by them. But on the flip side, where enemies generally used to be dangerous before, in the higher floors of Palace of the Dead and Heaven on High, was from their auto attack damage. And in this deep dungeon, that's really not a concern. I think probably the hardest hitting enemy that you'll find are the mimics on the later floors. And I think probably a mimic in 91 plus probably hits about as hard as a mimic in maybe like 61 plus of Heaven on High, and it's not able to crit either. So it's definitely a completely different route that they took with the enemies in this deep dungeon, to try and make them difficult.
Yeah, I mean, Sage said everything. I'm only on my I'm only like a week and a few days, and I'm still already in the disrespect monsters phase. You know, we're pulling 10 monsters plus with AoE damage on jobs that don't even have healing. No problem, because as Sage said, they make the auto attack irrelevant for most. There's some exceptions, but most of the monsters have irrelevant auto attacks. So that has a side effect of making it hard to learn, but easy to do once you've learned it. Because then, like, if you know all, like, because I love how you said the monsters are dangerous. Like, they are, but also they're not really, because like once you know, right? It's like I don't know. Maybe an example for Savage Raiders would be, there's easy Savage Raids, but you still die to them like 20 times before you get to that clear point, right? But like once you clear it every time, you're like, oh, that boss is a joke. That's kind of like every monster in Yo. Like, there's very few monsters that when you know what they do actually are a threat, and if so, it's usually because of like the deep dungeon mechanics, right? Like patrols coming around or traps. But like you would never lose against a monster. And meanwhile, if you're doing something like Heaven on High, then it's a completely different experience, because if you're playing, I don't know, Red Mage, then the Mimic on 91 plus kills you in 2 hits, and like maybe 1 hit with a crit if you've got a Gloom or something. So it's like, even if you know it's coming, you still can't really make it like 100% viable every time. So it's kind of the removal of RNG, making the runs more consistent at the cost of replayability, I would say. That's what the whole auto attack issue brought. And like Sig said, the monsters don't get much tankier from set to set, which means that it's kind of weird, because at the beginning you're like, oh shit, like this is really hard. Like, this is the way we felt when we went in the first time. We were like, oh my god, these floor 10 monsters are insane, right? They're so tanky, they're so dangerous abilities. I can't wait to see like what the hell they do in 81 plus. But then you get to 81 plus and you're like, okay, so they're almost the same tankiness, but now you've got all your bombs, so it's easier, right? It's almost like the difficulty is in the beginning, let's say like from 1 to 70, and then it starts gradually getting easier. And that's not even talking about the bosses as well. So
yeah, we'll get to the bosses in a little bit.
Yeah,
I think one of the biggest things I noticed is you can fight every monster on every job.
Yep, I can confirm. No steal required for any job, except maybe certain no item gloom combinations on like melees and some like DPS, but that's it. You can't pull anything without steel if it's not for debuffs. Yeah.
And that's a pretty big, because I remember even just with my limited experience going through something like Palace. What's a good example? The knights that do the donut AoE on the upper floors, the proximity aggro ones. I think it's yeah.
Deep Palace Knight.
Yeah. That was literally, I would visually see one and be like, anything to not have to fight that thing. Anything at all. Any other option, I'll wait for it. I'll wait 6 minutes for that thing if I have to wait for it to move. I don't care. I don't want to fight it. I don't want to use resources on it. That never happens once throughout all of Eureka Orthos. You just go, okay, that does this and this, so I don't have an interrupt, so I guess I need to run away from that, or it could be donut or point blank, and yes, I'm only referring to the Ortho systems because that's like the only thing I was remotely concerned with in the last 10 floors. I'd assume, Sig, that this is the narrowing it down. This in particular is the big thing, is the auto attack damage.
Yeah, definitely. And I think your example is kind of funny because the Knights in Palace, they're like pretty much if you're a DPS or healer, you're like, I don't want to fight those unless I have steel. Then the game's like, okay, if you leave these things alive for 45 seconds, we're also going to give them a damage buff to where they do even more damage. And so it's like, it's definitely, you can tell what their philosophy there was in terms of trying to make sure that you die. In Eureka Orthos, though, as you mentioned, the end result is that you can fight anything you want. You don't really have to make those kinds of decisions where you're like, I don't want to fight this thing, or you don't look at an enemy and be like, well, is this thing worth fighting if I have to use a steel, if I have to use resources to fight against it? Instead, the approach you take is basically, is this enemy in the way of the exit, or is this enemy blocking somewhere that I want to go, like if I want to pick up a chest or something? And regardless of what enemy it is, as long as I know its mechanics, I don't care. I have no fear fighting it. As amusing as it sounds, I think the only scary enemies in the entire deep dungeon, really, once you know what the enemies do, is probably the bear that is bugged in 71 plus and will just instant kill you if it gets desynced, or enemies that are literally have out of combat mechanics. So they're have these one shots from across a room, and it's kind of ironic that the enemies we're afraid of are the ones that we're not actually even fighting at the time. It's the ones that are out of combat that are scary to us. But kind of what happens as a result of that is you kind of get stuck in the motions of just performing whatever mechanics the enemy requires of you. And compared to other deep dungeons where you were making decisions about your palms based on the auto attack damage, and on a job by job basis, you're playing very differently to mitigate the auto attack damage. So for example, on ranged DPS like Machinist, you'd have to kite. You'd utilize your bind and heavy to slow enemies down and take less auto attack damage. On melee, you'd be very smart with your usage of Bloodbath and Second Wind, as well as whatever defensive you were given there. On healers, sometimes you would double pull and utilize whatever heals you had in your pocket to keep yourself alive. Instead, in Eureka Orthos, you pretty much don't have to worry about any of those things that involve mitigation or healing that is provided by your job. You're just doing the mechanic and hitting the enemy until it dies. And the end result is that it kind of feels like a lot of jobs, they all kind of play the same. I can play Machinist the same as I would play a melee DPS, because I don't have to worry about utilizing the strengths that jobs have when it comes to mitigation, and when it comes to staying alive against enemies that hit hard, because nothing hits hard at the end of the day.
Yeah. That's about right
Yeah.
with my experience, I'd say.
Wow, you talked so long that I forgot the question.
I was focusing down on Sig about the auto because you had brought up the auto attacks and how non.
Oh yeah, the autos.
Yeah, that was the.
Yeah,
big
well,
thing.
like Sig said, it is definitely the biggest difference, and like you said, like, is there a scary monster you don't want to pull? Like, it's the same as Sig said. There's no scary monster in EO. There's no like. There's not really a tier list of monster in your head, right? You just go into the key and you kill everything that could be in your way. So like my personal checklist is like patrols first. Well, it's like patrols first, monsters that do out of combat things second, and then third is just like whatever's in the way of the key. And yeah, there's not really. I mean, at this point, I did 13 jobs, and it's not really different whichever job I play. The only difference is that I will do maybe like multiples for fun or just for time, but mostly for fun.
I know. I saw the samurai clip. I saw that.
Oh, the lethargy
yeah.
trick. Oh yeah.
Pulled like what was it, like 8 mobs with lethargy on samurai on like 91 plus, and you're like, okay, whatever. Bloodbath.
That samurai run was a complete disrespect of their content. It's such a great watch. I watched a little bit of it after just like to see because I when I'm playing I don't really remember what happened. So I watched a little bit of it after, and it's like I think we did the last set. We used like nothing except Iwi pulls. We went to the last floor. We had 3 dreads, 2 onion knights, 2 flights, 2 storms. Like we had everything left, and I was like, my god, because I wasn't scoring that run either, right? It's a big difference if you score and you don't score. Because if you score, then all the time that you don't use, you can turn it into points, right, by doing things. But if you don't score, I agree. Like EO is too easy. But I'm not like, and I like personally, like in my opinion, I think that I don't like that it's too easy, right? I would rather it was hard, but like. There's a lot of people that disagree with the mentality of if you do everything correctly, you should still be able to lose a run, right? There's people that think if you do everything correctly, you should win. I don't like every time. I don't know 100% of the time. I was discussing it with people, and there's a lot of people that feel like that. So like what's the word I'm looking for? Like deterministic content almost. So EO is built like that. EO is built in a way that if you do everything perfectly, you clear. Every time, like there's no RNG, and POTD and MI are different, right? Like it's like you can do everything perfectly, but then you don't even know like what is perfect because there's so many things that affect like the RNG, and then you clear or you wipe, but then you feel like maybe you're a little lucky or maybe you're a little unlucky. But EO doesn't have that feeling at all. Yeah, EO is just you do it, you get your title, and some people like that. So I mean. I mean, do you guys think EO is going to be the most popular thing, Deep Dungeon, out of the 3? I think it's going to be, by far. And even though it's my least favorite one, I think it's going to be the most popular for like the most amount of people. Don't know if you guys agree or not with that, but that's how I feel.
I think it's going to have the highest clear rate, but I don't think that makes it the most popular. Because a lot of those clears will not result in return clears doing it again, I feel. Which I guess is true of the other ones as well. Most people do just go through Palace or Heaven once to, get the title. Very few become, someone who's like, oh, I want to do it on 6 jobs, 12 jobs, Omni. Yeah. So I don't know. It's hard to judge. I think for a time it'll be, because I think 21 to 30, most people are going to use it for leveling, if anything. But I don't know. Sly, where are you at on that?
I kind of feel like from my experience, from my community experience, I feel like while this is popular and it will remain relevant for a while, people kind of gravitate more towards actual POTD. And I think it's been years since POTD was originally released. So they gravitate more towards that. And I think that will continue to happen. More so than Heaven on High or Eureka in months to come. So yeah, I like after this, I kind of want to go back to POTD.
See, that's what I was thinking. If anything, EO is going to make the other ones more popular than EO itself, because I think people will still see Necromancer and Lone Warrior as bigger achievements that they may not have, even if they have once in future once in future king or queen. So if anything, I think it's a for now thing, and then later those still remain to be the most popular of them.
Yeah.
Yep, and I think that's how probably a lot of us feel in terms of the people that frequently run Deep Dungeon, even after we've gotten our initial clears, is that EO is going to provide a really good stepping stone for people who want to get into the other deep dungeons. But pretty much as like Finn mentioned before, I think what kept Palace of the Dead and Heaven on High alive for so long was that RNG aspect. And that's why people kept coming back after they were getting their clears. And I know it's a very different perspective for like me and Finn when we do like hundreds of runs, and it's we're used to failing. We're used to RNG screwing us over. I mean, there's cases where, you know, if you're on melee, for example, if you don't pick up steals, or if you get too many no items floors, I mean, your run could be over even if you do everything correctly. And I don't think for people like me and Finn, that's necessarily actually frustrating. In a lot of ways, that's kind of the stuff that we're looking for in terms of
fuck that,
the
it's frustrating.
challenge.
Fuck that.
Sly, they're looking to
Yeah.
enjoy the decision-making process. You want to win, and I think that's kind of the point here.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. I think for us, you know, we see it as a challenge because there's so many things that were thought to be impossible in Palace of the Dead, like with Behemoth and stuff. And people are always kind of pushing the limits of what's possible. So when we're presented with those types of situations, those are the fun things for us when we have our back up against the wall. And like Finn said, you know, people aren't expecting like a clear. That's when we're able to kind of go crazy and push the limits
Let
of
loose.
what is actually possible. And that's not something that we'll ever really be able to do in Eureka Orthos, except for in the context of scoring and trying to push the limits of what's possible in terms of score.
And speaking of score, Finn, I don't even know where to begin with score, because you were the first person I thought of when I was on the early floors. Like, scoring this must be awful for the early floors at the very least.
I mean, I didn't have time to really get into the meat of scoring yet because I'm a little bit, in the word race for Omni.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty bad. I mean, so far from what I've seen, the first 10 floors is just RNG garbage, right? Like, if you want to score the first 10 floors, you just go through, you do non-stop AoE pulls, and you just pray you find what you just pray you find what you need in the chest. Because like you just can't keep that up you can't do it without pumps.
I'd assume
So you just
sites
pray.
become like a huge thing for landmine plays in the first 10 floors for scoring.
Yeah, I do landmine plays. Every time I have a site on the first 10 floors, I just pop it and you do landmines. And you also there's a lot of jobs for which you need like a demi-clone for the boss. Because the boss is freaking long. I don't remember which tank. I did a tank and it took 6 minutes 30 with strength to do the boss. And if you have a demi-clone, it becomes like 3 minutes. So, it's like you need a demi-clone. The next two sets after that, you still do the score, the whole speedrun full kill. It's all right. 11 to 20 is okay. I'd say it's like a fun set. 21 to 30 is, I mean, if you run this in a group, you've seen what happens when you do AoE pulls, right? There's a little bit of ortho knight going around and killing everyone. So like when you're alone, it's kind of the same. I mean, like I said, I didn't really go in depth into it, but so far what I found worked for that set, you just use your bombs, your really strong bombs, right? Like your storms, your dreads. Try and make it in 30 minutes. And then everything beyond 31, it's pretty fun actually to score so far. I've not really went in super hard on it, but it's pretty fun because basically you do AoE pulls. And you can do big ones, right? Because there's not really any auto attack damage. And then you just gotta make sure you pull monsters that make sense, right? So like for example, the sword, the Star Wars guys on the 3140, right? Don't even remember what he's called. The guy with the 4 swords. Then you don't want to pull him when you're doing a new pull.
Yeah.
Yeah. This guy. You don't want to pull him when you're doing a new pull, but then you want to pull like things that are easy when you're doing a pull, and then it's kind of the same dynamic all the way to the end, and including the last two sets. So yeah, scoring is gonna be, I think, pretty fun. I think this is going to make scoring more fun than Evan, but I still think POTD is going to be more fun to score than EO.
Let's see. Phantom Ortho Race. Sorry, I was recording a guide, so I have all the monster names written down with their AoEs, so I had to refer to it. That guy.
I don't know the
like
name,
an
man.
hour
Too many
long. This was an awful thing to make a guide for. This was terrible. Let's just let Maggie do their thing, because this is terrible to try to describe and guide for. This is 19 pages of just information that needs to be regurgitated. Oh man. Yeah, I'm really.
I made a video guide and sorry.
No, I was just gonna say your scoring thing. I was gonna comment on it.
Yeah, I was going to say I made a guide too for Warrior, and it's a guide, right? It's just a run where I describe every monster. It took 10 hours, so there's a lot to talk about.
That is a lot. I cannot do a 10-hour. I mean, I know it's a run, so it's like it's the whole thing, but just the thought of it just kills my brain, in all honesty. So kudos to you for doing that one. So while the monsters play a big part, and we will get to the bosses momentarily, I want to stop short of the bosses and talk about the interactions you have with the monsters, specifically Proto-Mander. They're Pomanders. Can we just agree to call them Pomanders? Is anyone calling them Proto-Manders still?
No. I just call them Pomanders.
Has everyone abandoned the name Proto-Mander already? Is that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think anyone was on board to begin with.
No.
These, I also feel, because of the monsters, have such different interactions in the way that you use them versus the other two. Even the ones that are the same as the previous deep dungeons. Other than Steel, of course, which you've already discussed being, ironically, the most useless one. Somehow it got demoted from most important to least important. I think I'd rather Intuition than Steel, almost.
That's what I was.
Well, it depends on the dynamic, I think.
Yep, I was joking that I was impressed that they actually found a Pomander that I'm least interested in than Intuition, and it turns out it's one of the ones that we cared about the most in the past two deep dungeons.
Yeah.
How did you? So I guess before we talk about the old ones, I actually want to narrow down on the new ones, because I think those are probably the most important to talk. Finn, I saw you get up. I was like, oh, I'm ready. I saw you send him. He's like,
let's say.
He's like, just say lethargy. Just say it. Just say the word.
I kind of don't want to take like a score running like stance, because most people are just going to try to clear. So like the new problems, what are they? Lethargy is really good if you're trying to prog. It's like the only way you have solo to not die in one shot to something you've never seen. And also it's good to practice monsters you've never seen. Now you can get crazy with AoE pulls with Lethargy, but I think that's more like advanced, right? But they just to mention, if you do AoE pulls, Lethargy is completely broken. You can go like, it's basically a floor wipe if you use it that way, right? So that's nice. Lethargy is also okay, like oh shit button. Like if you think you're in trouble, then you have like a second to use a Lethargy and it might save you, right? So it's an okay oh shit button. And then what's
one issue
next?
with Lethargy.
I know exactly what you're gonna say, Sly. I know it already.
The shit that pops up after you Lethargy.
Yep, fucking floors 1 to 30 Lethargy feels the worst because the respawn
I'm
rates.
like, wait a minute, why is this like a normal fucking cast? Why aren't you slow? Oh. Yeah. Just got here.
Mimics too.
It's the same with the
traps,
Lurings.
all that.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So what's the next new pump? The Dread. Dread is weird, man, because it should be really good, but at least from my own experience, and I have a lot of experience just to like preface. So of course, for me, maybe it's a little different, but Dread sounds really cool on paper. It sounded really cool like when we were reading about it, but like in practice, you don't really use the Dread ever, because first, it's too rare. And second, you don't need to. So like all I do in my dreads is just trying to keep all 3 for the last set and then blow them to kill the annoying monsters. And then you can, there's a Vol on the dread, right? You can put it on the boss, but then I never have to. So it's a bit of a shame. It's gonna be great for scoring again, but like for not scoring, it's not really useful. It's there though. Like if you're ever on a boss and your time is really sus, then you can use a dread to last the boss and maybe save the run. And then the last new thing, am I forgetting a pun?
Storms.
Storms is really good. I think it's one of my favorite pumps. because it's like a high risk, high value Pomander. Like and it's not a oh shit button like Magicite. We discussed that last time I was there. You know, like I said, Magicites are too easy, and Sly heavily disagreed with me. I remember that. Storm. So Storm is like, it's not like a big oh shit button that saves your ass instantly, right? You gotta like plan around it. Now I would say that when there's a no regen floor, it's maybe a little too strong, but they're rare, so it's like, it's like a healthy amount of RNG, I think. So I'm not too much against that. But overall, I like Storm because it's like if you are not good and you Storm, you get maybe like a kill out of it, maybe 2, or you die because you try to do something and you can do it. But if you're good at using Storm, then it can easily turn into a 10+ kill floor, right? And in one shot.
I see treasure rooms, and then just AoE treasure rooms, and yeah.
But you know what's funny, Sly, is I think that people have now learned one of the deepest not secrets of Deep Dungeon, in that the imp witching is a massive bait. I think people have finally, who are not familiar, learned that they do not reduce auto attack damage with imps, and they have baited the witching storm situation and just instantly died many a time at this point.
To a dread beast?
A dread beast, or even just walking into a treasure room and getting too many imps and just standing in the middle of the room.
I don't know. I think if there's no dread beast, you're not going to die from imps.
You shouldn't.
I don't think you.
But people do really wild things when they don't know, when they don't understand how those things work. Like if you have 11 mimics in a room and they all get imp, and you're like, oh, I'll just witching them and whatever, and then all 11 mimics just turn and there's like 7 imps among them. You're like, oh.
That's funny because on our first team run, we had exactly that scenario. We had a mimic treasure room on the last floor on the key. And so we had the thing going on where Aurora, who was playing Astro, would put a star, and then someone would use a storm, and then he would trigger the star to kill everything. But we messed up the last one. So all like 10+ mimics pulled on Aurora, and they did not instantly delete him. And we were like, wow. Because we were like, oh my, like if this was in MLI, you would have died like 10 times from like 10 mimics attacking you. But in there, with his shield, he actually survived, and we could witching and clean them up, and we were surprised to see that. So I could understand if you would get caught off guard by imps if you were not used to that kind of damage in the other 2 deep dungeons. Because I think we're used to it, right?
Yeah.
So like for example, the what is it called? You know the guy that does the donut when you're in a group, the Falak, I think he's called.
Yeah, the Cachexia. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Like this guy, for example, attacks you for about 11k per attack, right? So you have like what 50k on the DPS, I think. So he kills you in 5 attacks, 5 or 6. So like I could understand things like that being scary for people that are not used to it, because that's not really something you see in other content. Like you don't really get attacked and die in 6 or 7 hit. Like for us, it's kind of a joke because regen potion, defensives, and then it's never going to crit you anyway. So it's like, that's the big difference. The crits are gonna come up over and over, right? It's like if you've got 20k, well, you might die in level high because the thing might crit you for 20k, but then you don't have that problem in EO.
Yeah.
And the demi-clones, I want just to mention briefly the demi-clones because they're like a new POM, right? Demi-clones are like, they're fun. They're weird too. I don't know how I feel about them, because Onion Knight's really strong. And maybe too strong, but then I feel like Yuna and Doda are maybe too weak. And they're like also super common when you get on the last 2 sets, the demi-clones. You find them like every chest almost. I don't know how I feel about the demi-clones, honestly. Like I like them more than Magicites, but they feel like they carry too much because of their drop rate. I guess that's the way I feel about them. I feel like their drop rate is the problem, not really the effects they have. Though I wish they made the Yuna and Dodra more useful. I wish they made Yuna maybe.
Wait. What do you mean? What is Une? What is this Une y'all talking about? I don't think Une exists.
Une I like to describe as, you ever been to a party and the one person there, they really only know one person, so they came with that one person, but they don't know anyone else at the party. That's Une. That's who Une is at the party. They're the person that doesn't really know anyone, but you're like, yeah, it's fine that they're here, I guess. But
Une is the old school Astro cards that weren't balanced. That's Une. It's like they're like we only have two demi clones. What's this third y'all are talking about? Like
Yeah,
I mean,
Onion Knight's the balance. Doga is like the arrow and the spear, and then Une's the other three.
Yeah. They really missed
because,
an opportunity with her. Because they could have made her like give you a shield that actually prevents you from dying from something.
Right.
Once.
Yeah.
But they made her give you a shield, which then makes it so you die from 300k 90 damage instead of 400k damage, right? So it's like, okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's nice for like some mobs that have like the unicorns with the repeat knockbacks, as it might absorb the hits and make you not get knocked.
Yeah.
Such
But
a
like, would
minor
you ever
inconvenience.
see Yune and be like, "Oh man, I'm going to spend my Onion Knight and pick up Yune"? Like, no, right? Like,
no, hell no, hell no. Like Doga, not even.
I love Doga.
maybe.
Don't talk shit.
I
about
love Doga.
I love Doga.
Yeah, well, Doga. The thing about Doga is like Onion Knight, strongest. We all agree. Doga still can mount bosses. Doga can
I
still
don't give a
help.
fuck
mount
about
bosses.
Doga on bosses. I want that petrify. I want to just be able to ignore
Fuck
everything.
that.
No,
Okay,
dude,
still
listen, I
fuck
know
that.
you're still upset about the fact that you can. So Sly, I actually had it happen after you mentioned it. I didn't die to
Fuck
it.
did I tell you?
Yeah, if they finish the cast bar but get petrified, but it's a 2-part attack, they do the second part even though the first part was petrified. Yeah, I did.
Like so, like the
Yeah.
timing. Doga's timing in terms of like regular fucking mobs. Like he'll do it, but I'm like, okay. Like in my group, I'm like, okay, watch out after he comes out. If we don't kill him, just watch out. And I have to tell them that every time because we don't know what the fuck is going to happen once they snap out of it.
It's better to
yeah,
be safe.
Doga is like I avoid him in my runs if possible for this reason because he's
Can't
too
be
dangerous on 2 parts attack.
Yeah.
Like you petrify, the sewer guys, the guys that do like the front cone into the back cone.
Zeratin.
Sorry.
That's exactly the mob it happened on
Yeah.
that I was referring
Yeah.
to.
So this monster is a perfect example, right? And also he stores the I don't know if you've seen that happen. It's not even the 2 parts attack all the
It
time.
can store the
Sometimes a
first
monster
attack.
will do
It's store.
yeah.
Stingrays.
Yeah, it stores it.
I had it happen on a stingray. So you know how the stingray isn't supposed to knock back the first target that it jumps on, only the other nearby targets. If it gets petrified in the middle of the slam, you will become a knockback target. I learned the hard way. It's apparently like a radius in the spot it's landing and not the person. So like while it's petrified on the slam animation, if you step out from where you were standing, then it'll knock you back too. I learned that.
We've had that happen. They like the ray was just pancaked on the ground. It was just like on the ground, like, and then I think we killed it before that was going to happen. But yeah, I think it was going to.
I was solo and it happened. I was like, what the? I went flying across a room and didn't hit anything. I was shocked.
Yeah, so Doga is just very dangerous. I think honestly I would like them more if they just made Yune and Doga better and Onion like a bit worse. I think Yune she's the healer, right? She should give you some kind of shield that actually
At least she
shields.
uses cure too.
Yeah. And then Doga should be like the AoE guy, right? Like he does an AoE Petri, so like give him a natural AoE dot. Like make him good in AoE pulls. That'd be nice. Because right now in AoE pulls you got nothing. Like you use Yune usually just because she heals you and saves you potions, but that's it.
Well, since we've gone ahead and tackled both the commanders and the demi-clones, let's work in reverse. And so Sig, demi-clones we'll start with, and then you can go back towards the commanders of Lethargy, Storms, and Dread.
Yeah, so I think with demi-clones, in general, I can see what they tried to do with them, but it's not very well executed. Doga petrify bugs aside, but just in general, it's just not very well executed in the context of what they did with the rest of the deep dungeon. Because you could tell, I think the idea behind it, at least for solo play, was they're supposed to be there to make up for whatever weaknesses you had in the job that you brought in. So I think the idea is, if you're a DPS, then Une would be useful for keeping you alive if anything actually hit hard. And if you were like a healer or tank, then I guess either Onion Knight or Doga would supplement your damage and put you kind of on par with DPS, which is a good idea. But the problem is that it turns out all that matters in this deep dungeon is just raw damage for the most part. Sometimes you can get some use out of Petrify, I guess, especially if you're AoE pulling or something. But when it really just comes down to damage mattering, then all you pretty much want is to just stock up on whichever ones give you damage. And it's a nice idea, but it just doesn't work out very well. And I'm not a big fan of them, and especially on the later floors where you're pretty much, if you see a silver chest on the last 2 sets, there's probably like a 60% chance or so that you're going to be given one of these. And it's something that it's kind of too powerful as a result at the frequency that you get it. And it's just not very well executed in terms of the deep dungeon. Like, I would almost say that if you swapped out Magicites and Demi-clones in Heaven on High, that they might actually work a lot better in Heaven on High, even though it wasn't the deep dungeon that they were designed for in the first place. So it's kind of a strange situation with Demi-clones, and I don't really like them in this deep dungeon, to be honest.
You read my mind. I was literally, as soon as you were done talking, going to say that exact same thing. They feel like they're in the wrong deep dungeon.
Yeah, yep, definitely.
Well, I mean, since with that, then the commanders must be equally as either frustrating or interesting, I suppose, because they have a lot of different power packed behind them as well that I guess under the way you describe it, maybe don't meld or mix well with what this one does. Except maybe lethargy.
That's pretty much exactly true. So that it's probably the most powerful set of 3 Pomidors that that we got in any deep dungeon, because they always swap out 3 Pomidors in each one. And like, for example, in Palace or Heaven on High, you could see lethargy being really useful in situations where you want to make up time. And so you multiple enemies and use lethargy to keep yourself alive so that they're not autoing you for as much damage. In this deep dungeon, like Finn said, it's nice for prog, especially slowing down mechanics, and there are some panic situations that you can use it in. But it seems like where it's going to get the most usage is multi-pulls, which you really only need for scoring for the most part, because time isn't as much of an issue in this deep dungeon. So you really don't need to multi-pull, and in a lot of situations, if you are multi-pulling, you're either a madman like Finn, and you're doing it for scoring, or because you're bored because you've cleared like 10 times in a row or whatever.
Why don't you say if you're Finn, I guess?
Yeah, exactly. But it doesn't feel like it's particularly useful within this deep dungeon. I think moving on to storms, I really like the idea behind storms, but I actually wish that, like we noticed, probably a month and a half ago or so, that as part of like the 6.3 update, I think, that auto heal started to affect enemies. And we were like, is this a bug? Like, is this supposed to happen? Because before, the auto heal debuff on floors only affected us. So if an enemy was hit with like landmine damage or silver chest damage, it would regen health normally. But suddenly with the 6.3 update, that changed to where their health would just stay the same. And it turns out it was an intentional change for storms. But it seems like normally storms could be something that could take a good bit of skill and thinking to use. But as soon as you see an auto heal floor, auto heal disabled floor, it feels like it's just like, okay, I'm just going to use the storms here. It's a free floor wipe. So it kind of takes a lot of the potential thinking and skill that could come out of using that POM and kind of reduces it down to where it's not even a decision-making process. It's just, okay, I see an auto heal floor on the late floors, I'm going to use storms automatically. I think, and then with Dread, I think it's another cool idea, and I like the idea behind it because I liked Rage in Palace of the Dead, where it's something you could use as a floor wipe, but it was still something that could be dangerous to use. in terms of enemies doing damage to you, and not necessarily being able to like heal or mitigate while you're inside the transformation. But again, in this deep dungeon, because enemies aren't actually threatening from that auto attack damage, it's basically just it's just a free floor wipe. There's no danger or really thought that you have to put behind executing it. You just use it and hit enemies until you get to where you want to go. And you don't have to worry about any kind of threat that those enemies would pose like you do in Palace. So I think it's a interesting set of palms. But like you said, in the context of the difficulty that we got in this deep dungeon, it seems like a kind of a waste almost, because it would be cool to see some of these palms in a situation like Heaven on High, where there's a bit more damage, there's a bit more danger from mobs, and you could probably be a bit more creative with your decision making in terms of using them. But in Eureka Orthos, it feels a bit wasted and a bit of a disappointment.
Would you say that if they were present, and this is to both of you, if they were present in the other deep dungeons, that it might push them too much in the other direction of easing them, I suppose? Or are we way past that point with all the job changes affecting the old deep dungeons? Because I know that's been one of the biggest precedents for the old ones.
Yeah, I think definitely if these palms were put in the old deep dungeons, it would definitely make those deep dungeons easier. I think this is by far the strongest combination of palms that we've gotten. But I don't necessarily have, I wouldn't have a problem with more powerful palms. I think the thing that I have an issue with is whether those palms have some sort of decision making or kind of like a skill level to use behind them. So, for example, like I was saying, if you brought these palms back to Palace or Heaven on High, then you could see Lethargy getting a lot of use for multi-pulling. And it's something that would still be difficult if you're trying to pull as much as you can under the effect of a Lethargy. But it feels a bit more interesting than what Lethargy could be used for here, which is pretty much slowing down mechanics, and that's about it. Because you don't really care too much about the auto attack damage.
Yeah, I agree. They wouldn't make the other deep dungeons easier. Maybe except the demi-clones. I think if the demi-clones were in MRI, it would make it would be a worse thing overall. But I still think, I would like it actually, because I just don't like match size. We talked about this in depth the last time. Yeah. And Lethargy, yeah, it would be great because what would it replace? It would replace Frailty in MRI.
Yeah, Frailty in Heaven on High and Law? Which one does it replace in Palace?
I think it would replace Lust or Rezo and PUTD, because Lust and Rage are combined.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Lethargy would be fun in MLI, even above the Frailty. It would definitely make it easier if you knew what you were doing, but I think because even if you have a Lethargy in MLI, if you pull 10 monsters, you can't, because that 1 second where they all attack you, you're going to die one shot. Plus there's crits. So I actually, now that I think about it, I think Lethargy would be worse in Level High than Frailty. Because I feel like your AoE pulls would still be very hard unless you were a tank, right?
Probably.
And the Storm. I mean, Storm versus Petri. I don't know. I think I don't hate the palms as much as Sig, but I do agree that they're in the wrong place, because I'm trying to think of their uses in the other deep dungeons. I don't even think it would make them that much easier, because they have gotten easier, by the way, over the years, due to potions getting buff, potions healing more after the stat squish itself, making some monsters easier, job changes, of course, and all that. But I don't know. I don't think the palms are a problem as much as it's they're just in the wrong place.
Okay, that's fair. Excuse me. Now, there is one other thing that changed about the monsters on these floors, and that is the presence of 3 brand new ones that I think are the biggest gotcha moment that everyone probably had on the first day, and that of the Dread Beasts. Boy, I think they found all the auto attack damage and threw it into 3 mobs in the entire.
Pretty much.
Yeah, everyone here is thinking back to the first one that they pulled. I'm willing to bet right now how they felt about that.
Yep.
Last week the guests we had on talked about their first time with the Dread Beast. I want to hear your first time with the Dread Beast.
I'm not sure it was
go ahead.
our.
It's the same experience for the two of you, I think. So
Yeah, because we were in a group together. So I don't think it was the first Dread Beast we pulled, but I remember we pulled one on like 41 plus or 51 plus, and Finn died to it. So we witchinged it. It turned into an imp, and then it one-shot me from 100 HP. And I was like, oh, okay, these things are for real at that point, because I kind of assumed that they would probably also get stronger on higher sets, so that if a 41 plus Dread Beast was one-shotting me as an imp, well, what the heck are the later floors ones gonna do to even a tank with defensives and everything? But at least in a group context, I think they could be kind of neat. They're definitely a challenge to fight. In a solo context, it's kind of more so just a situation of, do I want to use a storms against this and get the free kill, get the buff, and since you pretty much only want damage in this deep dungeon, there's only one Dread Beast that's really worth killing and using a storms against, unless you have a free storms on the floor somewhere. So.
Yep, read my mind. Once again, 2 of the 3 Dread Beasts feel like they're in the wrong place. Anything that's focused on keeping you alive, just I don't care. Doesn't matter.
Man, can you imagine if you had the defense Dread Beast or Regen Dread Beast in Heaven High? Like, holy shit, would that be great? They're really in the wrong place. It's funny because the first time we ran and we saw like we had a defense, but no, we never killed a defense, but we saw the Regen one. We were like, wow, that's kind of nice. Now I see the reason why. I'm like, oh man, I'd rather avoid this monster, on the floor, because it's trying to one-shot me if I pull it. It's like Sig said, right? Like in a group, and by the way, my first experience was the same as Sig. In my first solo run, I did see a beast on like floor 8 on Ninja, I think, and I tried to kill it for fun, and it did like 80% of my HP in one strike, and I was like, okay, so you just don't kill Dread Beasts alone, just use a storm for them. It's like kind of whatever. It's still a small decision you have to take, so I don't hate it, and especially because Dread Beast, like the combination of a no regen plus Dread Beast, it's rare, right? So you can't just storm a Dread Beast floor and then go pick up all the loot. So you gotta like, it's a little risky to do a Dread Beast with storm, because then you gotta pull it before, but then you gotta make sure it dies before it reaches you. And then you also, like, if possible, you want to combine that with other monsters, because like you want to use a storm to speed up as well, right? They're fun. I like it, honestly. I like the Dread Beast solo, like taking care of it, even if it's technically just a storm thing, because it's at least one monster that I have to avoid as well. That's like, it's literally the only monster I have to actually pay attention to what its aggro site is, and see when he turns around. Everything else I just kind of go and if it pulls, I kill it. But it's like it needs the buffs to be all good, or they need to be RNG. But I would rather all the buffs were good. So like, for example, like the defense one could actually give you like, I don't know, a death immune every 10 minutes, right, or something. Like you can fail a mechanic every 10 minutes. Like if the defense one did that, I would go for it every run, no joke. And the regen one could just, I don't know, could regen you to full. No, that wouldn't even be. That would not be that good. I don't know what the region one could do, but like, I'm sure they could figure out a way where we would actually want to go for them. Because right now my runs is just, I see a centaur, I see if the 30-minute buff, which is insane by the way, is beneficial, and if it is, I pick it up. Right? That's pretty much it for the beast right now. So I wish the 2 others were made useful as well. And I don't know what they were. Like, I don't really know what they were thinking when they designed it. It's like a weird decision, design decisions. Because when they added the damaged beast, it's like, it made sense, right? But I don't understand when they added the defense and regen ones, what they were thinking with the damage being that low. I don't understand how you would come up to that conclusion. Like, unless they were running with 1 eater pull, literally, right?
Yeah, I think they just looked at what the auspices did and just did it in this form.
Just copy pasted it. Yeah, maybe.
So because the auspices are kind of the they're so rare and the buffs aren't that useful. So like even if you see them, like you're not gonna say no as long as you can safely grab the buff. Here you might actually say no, and in most of the times you will just say no. But like again, I think about using these in like Palace. I would have to gauge like a no item floor on Machinist. Like, can I kite this mob without actually using any sustaining potions, or only with a second wind, or having arm's length if I do take a hit to make it slow? Like all those are decisions I will think of if I get a no item floor. If I had the Lamia regen, suddenly a no item floor is a lot less scary. Just the idea of getting health back over time, even with no items or no auto regen. But here it's just not a decision that needs to be made at all, which is largely unfortunate. But much. Like you said, at least you have to avoid them.
Yeah.
It does. At least one monster.
Question: you stick them in Palace. How do you even kill them in the first place?
Maybe they're susceptible to heavy. Although that doesn't matter because they can hit you from 3 rooms away. I learned their range attacks have no limit. I lethargied one and ran 3 rooms away, and as soon as it came out of the cast, it hit me, and I was like, "What?" And it was the Mericidian dude where he just pokes you with the spear, but he poked me from 3 rooms away. It wasn't even like the Lamia throwing the fireball or anything.
I don't know. That it seems like it could be cool, but again, it's just something that just wasn't executed right. Like I remember the first day we were all freaking out because the Lamia. When it reaches a certain HP or at like certain points, it uses Petrify, and the Petrify gaze actually works on like mobs as well. So you can get a free Petrify kill, like it was a Heaven on High Petrify, and we were like, wow, that. I wonder if we're actually going to be able to utilize it. And then you like just see the damage that it does. You're like, no, I'm not. Never ever am I doing that.
Not a chance. Where's the Lamia demi clone that just does that? Wouldn't that be something? What if the Dread Beasts would just replace the demi clones, and that was just what they all did? You had the Mericidian clone. They kind of are in some ways. If you think about it, like there's a defense one, an offense one, and like a crowd control one and a super offense one. Kind of works out that way.
Yeah, sort of.
Just not really. So okay, that covers the commanders, that covers the demi clones, the monsters, but then we have another huge directional change, and that of the bosses. I think Svi said it last week. These are advanced dungeon bosses, I guess is the best way to put it. And I guess last week we expressed kind of liking these bosses, even if they are very simple. It's just nice to have like a dungeon, like the idea of a dungeon boss that is to some degree threatening. But I wondered how a seasoned vet of deep dungeons would feel. Because Finn, we talked about the Heaven on High bosses not really being that popular, I guess, because they're all kind of very similar, maybe stand in one place or do 1 of 2 movements. And the Palace bosses, on the other hand, are kind of like the ideal, especially floor 180 and a lot of the other stuff. These aren't like either of them. So I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on these more traditional dungeon bosses that are kind of like all or nothing, minus a few things being like Vuln stacks.
Well, it's kind of like how I assume it would be when we thought about it. They're like when you don't know what they do, you just kind of have to know. There's not, especially for someone like me. So we saw this a lot on the first day, by the way. Like people would come in our chats and be like, "Oh, this is like a Dynamo Acharyo, a Twister. You know what? This is a fire like Buzzja ice." And I was like, "Okay, like that's nice, bro, but I don't know what the hell these words mean." So. So like that's kind of what every boss was like as a veteran in DD, but that doesn't really do raids that much. Then all the mechanics, I had no idea what they did until they killed us, or until we got lucky and survived it, and then we saw what it did. Are they better than Heaven on High? Yeah, no contest. Like absolutely no contest. Are they better than PTD? I don't think they are. And when I say PTD, I mean like 180, 190, right? Because the rest doesn't really matter. Because like again, it's like the auto attack damage is not a threat. So all like once you know the mechanics, you just know them, and that's it. Like they're cool, But at this point, I worry about the time I have left on them. I don't really worry about dying to them anymore. In fact, I use the clones on them just to speed them up. Not even because I need to, just because they're so long. And they messed that up again. They made the HP scaling way too high again. Like, for example, I did Scholar 60 earlier.
Oh.
Yeah. That's the Gozu guy.
Yeah.
It took 1230 with no palms and no demi clone. I was like, oh my god. Like, here we go again. And I bet you the floor 99 boss would take like 25 minutes on Scholar or something insane like that. It's like they made them for dummy clones to be used against. So like you need the clone for them. Like it's just not realistic. And the mechanics are fun like the first 2 times. Then after that, you just kind of know what's coming. But I have to say the boss. This is a spoiler, by the way. So if you don't want to get spoiled, all right. Yeah. So there's a boss on 99. I think that's sick. I think that at this point the boss is a little too easy for me because I've done it so much. Plus, it has a safe spot for the hard mechanic. But it's sick that there's a boss on 99. I wish this was in High and POTD as well because it's very common in the 2 other deep dungeons that you get kind of like an anti-thematic last floor, right? Because the last floor you rage it usually, right? So it's like, oh, I'm on 197. I'm on the victory stretch. In EO, I still feel like that because now I know the boss really well. But it's sick to think that there's a boss right before like the finish line, right? And so like I gave that example, Godfather and POTD. Like, what if they made Godfather the 199 boss? That'd be fucking insane, like terrifying. And I wish that's something. I hope that's something they do again, like a boss as the very last thing. And but they need to make the bosses do like attack damage again, because like right now they just do no damage. At this point, I've done it on like the squishiest jobs. It's a black mage. And you don't even need a steal for any of them. Like this, all the steal does is let you survive mechanics more. So
I'd argue steal's most important on 10 and 20. Those are the 2 most auto attack damage bosses of the batch.
Yeah, 10 and 20 actually kick your ass a little bit with auto attacks. It's kind of weird that the rest doesn't.
Yeah, the rest of them.
But they don't really if you use potions, right? Like if you spam potions, it's not
comparatively to the other 7 bosses, they do way more auto attacks.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So yeah, that's my opinion. I think they're better than Heaven on High, but they have the same HP scaling problem. And I think they're worse than POTD because they went too hard on mechanics instead of actually auto attack / guiding damage. And they have very static pattern as well, but I think that's more of a Final Fantasy 14 problem. Everything is static. So like for example, the Gozu again. He puts like orbs, lightning orbs, then does the 8 strikes. But like these lightning orbs have static positions. Like it's always the same pattern. So I don't understand why it's like that. This is the same that it was for Onra. I don't understand why they're afraid of making RNG. Like, like why don't you just put the orbs in random places? Because they might bot you in one day. Yeah, okay, like that's fine. I don't know. I don't see that as a problem, So that's like my biggest complaint, I would say, with the bosses.
Sig, how are you feeling?
Yeah, so it's been kind of interesting to both for me and for the deep dungeon community as a whole to kind of see the reaction over time towards these bosses, because like Finn said, they're better than Heaven on High bosses, but honestly you could probably put like a striking dummy in the middle of the arena and just have people hit that for 5 minutes, and that would be better than Heaven on High bosses. So it was a very low bar to reach there, and also, like Finn said, kind of the standard by which we measure deep dungeon bosses is that Behemoth and Godfather 180 and 190 bosses of Palace. And the primary thing about those 2 bosses is that they kind of push just about every job to its limits. And it's primarily through the use of auto attack damage. So they're forcing the use of pretty much every mitigation, heal, everything that you have in your kit, trying to get the most out of it. And you can absolutely die to the mechanics that are part of that, at least for Godfather. Obviously with Behemoth, the only mechanic at the end is just the meteors pretty much. So you're just racing against the damage itself. But for Godfather, for example, like I've died to the mechanics to Godfather plenty of times, but it's more because I'm like stressed out about actually surviving the auto attack damage, rather than because I just am having a hard time with the mechanics themselves. And for Eureka Orthos, it's kind of, they took the opposite approach, where the first couple of times the bosses seemed tough because we didn't know the mechanics. But a lot of the bosses, they just do mechanics. They aren't doing auto attack damage. I'm not sure if maybe the damage would be something worth noting if they actually like followed us around and hit us instead of just doing mechanics constantly. But at the end of the day, all they're doing is mechanics. And I think that's something that could be okay if they implemented something more along the lines of like the 99 boss, where it's going into a rotation of like 5 or 6 mechanics. But for most of the other bosses, it's just the same 3 mechanics repeated over and over and over. And when they're expecting us to fight these bosses for, 8 to 10 minutes, if you're not using a demi-clone, then it kind of turns into a disappointment pretty early and brings back memories of the Heaven on High bosses. So I think it would be nice, my ideal deep dungeon, if they would put in a mix of those bosses that are difficult because of their auto attack damage, like along the Godfather lines, and then bosses that are difficult because of the mechanics that they throw at you, kind of like the floor 99 boss, where it's a pretty good mix and a good like 2 or 3 minute rotation that it has, so you're not just seeing the same thing over and over in solo. But I think early on we were like, wow, we're getting some real challenging mechanics for the bosses. But now that we've gotten them down, it's like, all right, these bosses are pretty much just a waste of time. You just have to not make a mistake. You have to just make sure you have enough time to kill them, and that's all the bosses really are at the end of the day.
Yeah, because even looking back at Palace bosses, I think of, what's a good example? Like the Oceanus one that heavies you, that, you get the diminishing returns on it. Even that simplicity of just having the heavy and knowing there's an AoE to avoid, that's something that like the normal, like the Yabi does that in EO. So you could say that they're equatable, but there's something a lot more dangerous about it in Palace, in that you could just die to the auto attacks on top of that, so you're managing the auto attacks and that. But that's completely removed from even the bosses here. I think the only thing on the higher floors that even hits hard from the bosses, I think Light Stream on the 490 boss, the random AoE it does between the first 2 support systems, that might be the hardest hitting thing most of the bosses actually do.
Yeah. Though you can survive it easily with a push and rolling, even on no steel DPS. So
yeah.
Yeah,
I think it does.
Because
like
he stops
half your
attacking you
health
right
there.
after. No, more than that. It's like, I don't know, 70% maybe.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
and then not only all the things you just said, but the fact that and I'm assuming y'all are talking about mostly in a solo setting, group setting. You have 3 other people.
Oh boy, you do.
You
have 3 demi-clones is what you fucking have.
Yeah, so essentially you have 7 people. So there's that. And then, okay, Haps has a tweet about this.
Yeah, I my guys to the floor 99 boss.
Eureka Orthos is a light party. 3 onion knights, 4 string pommeters. So you find one pretty much on the you pop one on the last 4 and then pop
Find
the other
one.
3.
Yeah.
Dread Beast damage buff, Dread Palm, 5 Bone Stacks, kill boss.
Yeah.
The palms and everything, in a group setting, trivializes bosses. It's in a group setting, they're so trivial.
It's funny though, the mechanics on the regular mobs are way worse when you're in a group setting because they can fucking go anywhere.
Yeah.
People die so often when they're just like, I was too far away, or somebody baits something like in an undodgeable scenario. But as soon as you're alone, you're like, oh, thank fucking God there's not other people here. I'm so glad I'm alone right now.
Yeah, it's maybe it's a little psychotic to say so, but as someone who usually plays solo and doesn't play group much, I'm looking forward to EO as the group deep dungeon the most, because there's so many things you can use to just kill the other people that you're with.
It's gonna be like Death
Oh,
Cobb.
you're that person.
Yeah.
You are
Yep,
that
that's
person.
me.
Okay.
Yeah, so when I rescued someone who had revelation casting on them and then moved away from everyone else, that's something you're gonna try to do deliberately.
Yeah, exactly. You're,
Oh my
you're,
God.
So it's like, oh, look
brainstorming.
away, but then on the other side you rescue them through, so looking away is actually looking at the case alien. That's so toxic. I love it. Yeah, it's weird. It is. I actually think this might be the better of the group ones, because when I think of Palace and Heaven, and again, we touched upon it on the show about a month ago, it's almost funny just to watch people be that way when you know what you're doing. But like, okay, if anything happens to them, who cares? Like, I'll fix the whole thing. And while that's still kind of the case here, you can get away with it even more easily. So you're willing to step it up and actually actively fuck with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I did a group run.
Yeah.
I actually found the time to do a group run with two of my friends. Two of my friends. And it was way more fun than POTD and MLI. Like, way more fun. Because they didn't know anything about what was going on. And even though I knew everything, it was still like really fun to see them, die 5 times because they had that slugs. Didn't know it would reflect damage, or pretty much die to like every single donut that there was.
Oh man. I did 4 runs to get them out with a group in a group setting, and they were all I was mildly stressed when some reckless decisions were made, but it was a lot of fun, I'd say. But the last boss, literally the last boss was 60 seconds. I don't think he gets to even do the first sword attack. No, he doesn't even get to do Soul's Calibur when you do it with all the settings in a group. He just goes away, and it's ridiculous. So, yeah. So group setting, I think, okay, it sounds like that's one positive that we do have, is that group settings might be hilarious, might be some meme runs. Scoring in a group, I'd assume, Finn, you've also thought about that, might also be still okay, given the health bars probably don't matter as much when you're...
I have no idea how it's going to look, but yeah, I'm sure it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
2 duo score runs probably, yeah.
Yeah. So there are some redeeming factors, but it does seem like the overall air about it from the people who do Deep Dungeon the most is that there are too many decisions made for... I'll say what Zeno said when we were on Mog Talk, the lowest common denominator. He went so far as to say that, yeah.
It's kind of tricky because I think going into it, we had the expectation that they might make the deep dungeon a lot easier for soloing, and that was actually something that I would have been okay with. I don't mind if they make it easier. I think the problem that a lot of the deep dungeoners have an issue with is that they transferred the difficulty from previous deep dungeons from the decision-making side of things to just being able to execute mechanics. And it's kind of funny. I'm going to call out Angelus, but Angelus was like, it's good to see that they experimented with a deep dungeon and tried something new. But I almost get the opposite feeling from this deep dungeon, in that the thing that made Deep Dungeon unique in the past and set it apart was that it was extremely RNG heavy, and the main expression of skill was your ability to make decisions based on those RNG factors. And in this one, they kind of took that away and put the difficulty into making sure that you learn the mechanics and are able to execute them, which feels like pretty much any other content that you can find in the game. So it feels like they took the experimental and unique things that made Deep Dungeon so different from other content, and they made it much more samey to everything else that they're making. That's why, like, Finn referred to this as the Raiders Deep Dungeon, essentially. It feels like it lost a lot of the uniqueness that the previous 2 Deep Dungeons had. But I think we're still trying to take it in a positive light, that this could attract a lot more people to Deep Dungeon. It could bring back a lot more interest into Palace and Heaven on High as well. And at least for me, in terms of like content that can be queued solo, like I played a lot of Bosja, a lot of Eureka, a lot of the deep dungeons, and to finally have somewhere that I can actually utilize the 90 kits in a situation where I can just queue in solo whenever I want. It's nice to have, and I think I'll still have a lot of fun with it. It's just not quite what we were hoping for out of a deep dungeon in terms of the kind of challenge that we got for solo players.
Yeah,
That's fair.
I agree with. Oh, sorry, you want to go?
No, I was just agreeing.
Oh, yeah. Well, I agree with Sig mostly. I think I'm taking it a little less worse. I'm taking it a little less worse because, like me, well, two things, right? First, I've never really raided, so it's kind of new, shiny, raid mechanics I've never seen. And second, I mean, it kind of boosted my streams a lot with EO, right? Like the viewership. So it's like even if I try not to, I'm making that association in my head, right? Like it is helping me. So I think this is helping me also see EO in a better light. But I do agree with everything Serena said, and like we both say at this point, it wasn't made for people that really enjoyed the two last deep dungeon. It was made for people that did not enjoy them. We talked about this last time we were on the podcast with Eureka and Buzzja. I had a similar opinion about Eureka and Buzzja. I said that I felt like Buzzja was the Raiders Eureka, and I think that's exactly like the way EO turned out. So in inside should not have been surprised because there was a precedence to it. And well, there was something I wanted to say, but I don't remember. Yeah. Like Angela said, it's no, that wasn't that. Oh, anyway, I don't remember. But yeah, so I'm still having fun though. But yeah, I will get bored of this one faster than the others, definitely. And I'm happy if people they get into EO, and because they get into the EO, they go back to check out Beauty and MLI. Well, I'm gonna be honest. It's hard to sell the fact that you're going to play with level 60 and level 70 toolkits after you've played with level 90 toolkits. Like, it's real hard. There's some jobs that don't suffer too much from it, like Red Mage, a little bit of Samurai, but like even then, there's like like things like Black Mage. It's hard sell, man.
Well, I'll give you good news from the Raider perspective is that most people in level 90 raids also don't use their level 90 toolkit very well. So maybe it'll be an improvement in some ways.
Yeah, maybe it'll be.
Maybe. If anything, it's almost to me now, looking back, interesting to think of doing more with less. So, like, I actually look at it kind of now in the opposite light after a week and a half, where I think, like, oh, well, if I only have my 60 toolkit, I'm almost thinking about how that changes the way I'm going to play. And yeah, might I miss some things from the higher level? Sure. But I don't know. I think about it almost a little differently. And I kind of hope other people think about it that way too. Just, working within the constraints. Because that's kind of what Deep Dungeon always was. It was working within the constraints of whatever you have in a given situation. And in this case, it just happens to be your level 60 and 70 kit for the earlier ones.
Yeah, it is very sad, this Deep Dungeon. I've felt that a lot. I'm not getting pushed to use my toolkits at all. In fact, like all my runs, there's always like a thing that I do super wrong, and it still never matters. Like like Ninja has a rejuice, I think, on max level. Like they get a lightning strike that he can use after every rating.
Mm-hmm.
I probably burned like 90% of them and never used them, and it still didn't matter. My Storm Eye upkeep on my warrior was garbage, didn't matter. My dancer never aligned anything, didn't matter. And also, there's all the defensive buttons were like never used for any of these jobs. It's kind of a shame that we have the shiny toolkits, but we don't really get to push them. At least in the context of just trying to clear. And it's also, I don't know if we're gonna talk about this later too, but as we talked in the podcast with Angelus a few weeks ago, we were all caught off guard, like very off guard by the way they designed this place. Because I'm sure you remember, all of us agreed that we didn't know how they would balance tanks, because we just assumed auto attacks would be the same. Like, it didn't make sense for auto attacks to be gone. Like, it made zero sense. So we just assumed, like, okay, how are they gonna balance the tanks? Like, tanks are gonna be broken. And like now it comes out and we're like, wow, tanks actually are not that good. But that's because they made it like so different. Like it's I don't think any of us were prepared for it. So, and yeah, I think you're gonna see like that opinion from like anyone that did a lot of PUT and MLI is gonna be like sort of disappointed. But a lot of people that didn't do it, I think are gonna be happy with EO. I think it's gonna be like the general sentiment. I mean, I'm sure I don't know in your chat, in you guys' chat, but in my chat, I've seen a lot of people are like, I love EO, because like there's no RNG, right? Like I don't get screwed by like a gloom, no item.
Says it right there in my chat about 5 minutes ago.
Oh really?
Yeah, I'm happy they did those changes. Getting 4 gloom floors in a row with crappy palms only to die mid behemoth is not fun.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't want to diminish the people's opinions, but like, there's a lot of people that feel like that, right? Like they straight up feel like that. So like, I'm disappointed with EO in ways, but I also understand why it came out that way. Now, of course, my selfish opinion is that I hope it wasn't like that. But that's life. I mean, I'm still having fun with it, and NRI and POTD are still available to me. Though I wish they let us still use the toolkits in there. I wish they one day just do like a patch that lets you go in max level or something.
Unreal Deep Dungeon.
Unreal Deep Dungeon. Just make it happen. It'd be so fun, man. I don't know. They take a lot of weird decisions. Like just another thing about the achievements. You may have noticed there's a 10K badge achievement.
There's a 20,000 back there achievement.
Yeah, there's a 20,000 one now. But they added that. I know, right? But they sat around a table, right? Or whatever. They sat at home because they work from home. And then they were like, okay, which achievements does the Deep Dungeon community need? Should we add an achievement for clearing on more than one job? No. Should we add an achievement for, clearing like more than 4 times? No. Should we add an achievement for 20K bags when there's not even 100 people that have 10K bag? Yeah. Okay. So they added that achievement. And then, no achievement for Omni clearing, no achievement for clearing on more than one job, no cool like achievement that like, oh, do this, like do a run in 5 hours, or I don't know. It's like, it is a weird decision. It's a Square Enix decision, though. I see Square Enix in that, but
it's an easy one. Like there's no thought that needs to go. It's like whatever, just do. It's like every expansion gets hunt achievements. Sometimes they add a new old hunt achievement for like even like 10,000 S ranks, A ranks, whatever.
Yeah, I'm honestly the most. I think by far the thing that pisses me off the most in that whole thing. It's when I saw the 20K achievement, someone like told me in my chat, and I checked it. I was like, wow, they dared to add a 20K achievement, and they did not even add like a solo achievement more than clearing once. I was pissed. And I'm still pissed, and I'll be pissed until I die, probably. So
that's a long time.
Yeah, that's a long time, man. I'm gonna remember that one.
It's gonna be on your epitaph. Be like, still pissed.
I think there's a 30K achievement on the next Deep Dungeon. I just get all my air out.
What's the strategy for even doing that? What, just run like the 10 fastest floors and like in I guess heaven and just 21 to 30 and just try to get as many as like what's even the plan for trying to do that?
I've heard the strategy is you take an 11 plus file where you have the intuition. You use the intuition, see if there's a horde on floor 11. If there is, you get it, and then you reset.
Oh, right, because it counts as soon as you open it, even if you don't get to keep it.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
So you just keep resetting with that file with an intuition.
That's the worst.
I think somebody said they got like 415 hours. I think I calculated it out, and you'd have to do it for like 770 hours or something to get.
Is it weird that now that you've said that to me, I want to do it? Is it weird?
Yeah,
it's kind of weird.
I mean, I did the ocean fishing achievement. I guess it shouldn't be that much of a surprise, but this is way worse than that. Oh my God. It hurts. It physically hurts to even hear that being the way to do it. But like, what's the title for, is there anything for the 20,000?
Yeah,
cursed.
20,000.
Oh, I thought for some reason I thought that was already the accursed. I guess it's the accursed horde. I thought that was for 10,000. Is there one for 10,000? A title?
Yeah, 10,000's hoarder.
Gee, they're so fucking original between the two titles. They're like, well, it's called the Accursed Horde. We use one word. Let's use the other one. It's a pretty good title though. The Accursed.
Yeah, they order.
Both of them are pretty.
It's very.
They're very good. Yeah. It's no world-class troller, but I'm unironically like, should I try this? I think I have like 300. I'm almost there. I'll be there in no time.
Yeah, you're close.
Sounds so unconvinced.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so that pretty much covers the majority of, I guess, the actual gameplay mechanics around it. I do want to, I guess, on my note, give shout-outs to a couple of things that I think they really did know that people wanted. The music variety is top-notch. I think they did a
Yes.
way better job. Even if I feel somehow there's so many tracks and some of them still just play so frequently. But they have the entire Pulse album. They have like a bunch of Shadowbringers dungeons. There's a lot of tracks. They even have the Cerberus stomach music.
The muffled version,
Yeah.
Like, I keep getting that like every so often, and I fucking hate it.
Yeah, there's variety, all right. I don't know if all of it is what I would have put in, but yeah, there's a lot of good music at least. But there's some weird ones like the dubstep, the hardcore dubstep. I will never
The
like.
long fall. Yeah, the long fall dubstep.
Is it the long fall? Yeah,
That's
every
one
time
of the
that
more,
plays.
yeah. That's one of the more divisive Pulse tracks as a whole. I'm just glad Heroes
I still
didn't
like it.
play. I'm just glad Heroes.
I still like it.
Yeah, it's okay. I think it gets worse as soon as the dubstep part kicks in. I think it's good until the dubstep part actually kicks in.
Yeah, and the gun reload sounds.
Yeah. Also, the I prefer the mount choice here. Not the crab in particular. The 1 for 4 clears, which is the floor 70 boss. I thought that was for me. I prefer that over what is it? The dodo and the horse from Heaven on High.
Yep.
So the
Yeah. Not a fan of either. The dodo's funny, but I don't want it. The crab's whatever. I don't really care about the crab either. The other crab is better. The story and the lore put into this one really makes me wish they'd fucking explain Palace of the Dead past 100 now, because we really have no fucking
that's a
idea
lot
what
of
the hell's
floors to
going on
explain.
there. Yeah.
That's a lot of floors to explain.
Yeah.
I have
don't
no
know
idea.
about Finn, I haven't looked at the lore at all that they put.
Yes.
Well, they put a lot of effort. I mean, there's cutscenes for beating 30. There's cutscene for beating 100. That's a follow-up to the old Crystal Tower quest line. That also has follow-ups to other quest lines. There's references to other quest lines. And you can get a synopsis of all the lore of all the bosses as well. So,
Yeah, I think both me and Finn skipped that on our group. All of us skipped it. So
Yeah, I read it
haven't
really
gone
fast.
back to watch any of it.
Yeah. Although I will say the floor 50 Palace lore, quite good with Edda. You know, that definitely gets a big one up. Heaven on High, not so much. It's just kind of basic.
Yeah.
And then what else was there? Just I guess the reward structure in general. I feel like they've already proven this before, but Palace of the Dead's Accursed Horde plus Orthos fragments plus 100 floor fragment reward structure has always been kind of good. It's surprisingly lucrative when there's less people doing it, and quite rewarding for people who have never done it before. It's way better than Criterion at the very least. Low bar, but way, way better than Criterion. So
Yeah, I mean, we made a lot of money, but we do it so much that I don't know if we're good examples. But yeah, I mean, the bags are just free money. Like if you know how to play Deep Dungeon, I mean, I have like what 500 million at this point. You know, it's just from the bags and a little bit of crafting, but mostly the bags. So
they've proven some things work, and also tomes always work for me here. I mean, the tomes are money in one way, and tomes are, in my case right now, relics. People were like, "Oh, I wonder if they'll put relics in the deep dungeon." Well, 60 astronomy tomes per clear. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, they are how I get the new relics at this point. So there's little things like that they still, I feel like they got right, and at the very least want to give them some credit for that. But overall,
that's the things they brought back, right? Like that's just the things they brought back from the other one.
The things that worked.
Yeah.
Some of them they work. Some of them they're updated. Again, I feel like the lore is really a big standout.
Oh yeah,
me.
the lore definitely.
Yeah, because like Heaven on High, you're kind of just left to think that a dodo got stranded on floor 100 and made a nest, and that's it. And there was nothing else. And then 200 Palace, you're just like, is this hell or purgatory? I don't understand. Also, the design of the last 20 floors, I'm glad they went with another kind of super creepy, deep into the earth design.
Oh yeah, it looks better than PUTD, which I didn't think would be possible. I didn't think they would make something look better than PUTD, but the whole like 81 to 100 stretch, I'm like, my god, man! The first time we zoned into that in the group run, we were like blown, we were blown away. When we entered the floor 100, it was like, holy shit, it looked so good. If you've never seen the floor 100 and you're listening and you want to clear, try not to spoil what it looks like to you because it looks so good, man. I love it.
Even the floor 90 and 99 boss arenas, if you stop and like look around, they're
They have like the whole
So those, there's places. I don't think most people would argue that environment and sound design are places they classically struggled. But I know honestly, that does speak to one disappointment with this. Am I the only one who was not glad to see the mining floors of Palace return from 31 all the way up to 80 or 41 up to 80? I didn't understand why they used those again.
They're an interesting choice, especially because they put so many enemies that you need to LOS for in those floors, and those are just like notoriously hard room layouts to find LOS spots in. So I wasn't particularly happy to see the return of the cave floors, but I don't know. I do enjoy the rave cave meme when you get the dubstep going there. Is the dubstep good?
Rave cave.
Not really, but at least it's funny to have it going on with all the multicolored crystals in there.
It's too bad the Mithridates isn't there. He'd be perfect for the rave cave.
Yeah, exactly. Bringing the laser light show.
Yeah, exactly. For me, it's the trap layout in the donut floors is also quite deceivingly annoying. Any place where there's like a crystal that pushes you kind of inward becomes this like massive risk. So you almost have to follow the inside of the wall instead of the outside. But even then, it's I've cited a few of those, and it's been kind of scary.
Well, like massive risk, like what risk? Because I have worse than it alluring.
True.
I have worse than alluring and witching, Like, I think the worst that can happen is you have a ninja guy on you and you hit a landmine. But like other than that, there's not much that can kill you.
Oh yeah, we forgot about the ninja.
We didn't forget. It's just that that's something that really only affects you if you're either paying no attention or you really fucked up. But those ninjas are hilarious.
Yeah, you really fucked up and hit a landmine. That's some old 11 type bullshit. The whole like blood aggro.
That's not blood aggro. That's blood murder. That's literally blood. I'm surprised the sharks don't do that. In all honesty, they don't try to just bite your fucking head off if you get low on health or something like that.
Yeah, I gotta say though, when I think Sig mentioned a line of sight, that's one of the things I was very happy to see with EO. They kind of embrace the line of sight because that's something we discussed too in the last podcast. I was like, the line of sight strats in Evan I are a little jank. I thought they would be gone, but they embraced them full time, man. There's some monsters that you actually cannot do if you don't line of sight. That's nuts. I didn't think they would do that because I remember the first time we pulled the wolf, we were like, wow. Like, you can't stun it, you can't sleep it, you can't interrupt it. Like, you gotta hide or you're dead. Like, there's no... Love to see that. And then they kind of removed the line of sight on the last two floors, which is a little bit of a shame. Last two sets, I mean, sorry.
Yeah, and
it was really
there's
fun
no mechanics for it. They know they got rid of it, so there's also nothing to actually do. I actually have line of sighted something with the bridge. The tiny little, like...
Oh, yeah. The 8 difference.
Yeah. It was like it was here, and then the little tiny like thing here, and then I was here, and it was like, yeah, that's it. You've line of sighted it, and I was like, okay, I'm never relying on that, but glad to know that it works, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. In the 21 and 31 set, the what we call the soup bowl hallways, the ones that dip down really far.
Oh God, those are so
yeah.
So you can set up the enemies so they're standing right next to you, but because the height difference is so extreme, neither of you can hit each other. So you both just kind of stand there awkwardly right next to each other, just looking at each other.
Yeah, those have caused some issues in the past. But there's all sorts of weird stuff like that. Either way, I hope that it's not another 4 or 5 year wait for another deep dungeon. I'm sure because now that this one's gone this way, I'm already thinking about. We talked about this again a month ago. Things we wanted to see, and now I've been doing this, and I'm thinking about now I want to see this, but Savage. That's the next thing here. 0.5 Savage, where it actually has auto attacks and there's a little more randomness to it and whatnot.
Yeah, I think there's maybe some copium, but I'm also hoping that they pull a palace and add like another 50 or 100 floors to this one. But yeah, hopefully it's not too long until we see another one. I mean, I'm sure they're watching and they see just how much traction this one's getting. And even though I'm worried about how long it might survive over time, I mean, there's no doubt that this one has gotten a ton of attention. I think we're a week and a half in, and I checked this morning, there's been over 930 solo clears already, which is absurd because, I mean, probably in Palace and Heaven on High. I mean, Palace, there were 2 solo clears in all of 2018, and then it like barely picked up pace past then, and it's kind of been slowly increasing. But the idea that any of the other deep dungeons would be cleared 900 times in 2 weeks is just absurd in terms of how many people are doing it and how many people are enjoying it. And there's still lots of people that are going in and getting 2nd, 3rd, 13th, 19th clears. So, you know, it's still the popularity that the deep dungeon is seeing does make me very hopeful that Square Enix sees it and they look to implement more in the near future, hopefully. Or maybe not the near future, but hopefully not in 5 more years.
I'm sure there's
It
got
must
to be
make you
some.
scared.
Oh,
though.
sorry.
Sorry. Okay, I was going to say it must make you scared that they'll say that this one's doing good, right? Because then if they release a new one, it would probably follow the same formula.
Read my mind. That's what I was going
That
to
is
say.
scary.
Oh.
I got a lot of mind reading going on in this one.
So would we want for maybe looking forward to next expansion, would we want deep dungeons at the same rate we're getting ultimates? So like 2
That
per
would be nuts.
2 per expansion.
That would be nuts.
That would be amazing. I don't know if they could do it.
Yeah. I mean, you're asking me if I want two chates instead of one. So, like, of course, yes. But, like, I mean, it would need to be still of a high quality, you know? Because I don't think Yo's low quality. I just think it has problems with its design. Well, I think it's actually pretty high quality. They also fixed the spinning, by the way. We didn't even thought of that, but...
I tried, yeah. I did try to do spin strats on a mob. And
so they fixed spinning, but it doesn't matter because nothing hurts. But they still fixed it. So I mean, clearly they were listening to feedback. You know, clearly they were listening a little bit to feedback. So maybe there's a chance that they would make the next one a little more like Beauty and the Eyes. Yeah, and yeah, of course, if we could get 2, it would be sick. But you know,
I remember our group run. One of the first things that Finn and Aurora checked was if spinning was still in there. And they were like, nope, can't spin these. And I was like, hey, maybe this deep dungeon will take more than a day to clear solo. And it ended up taking 22 hours anyways.
Nope.
So. Nope.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm still just hoping to see more. Again, we talked about a month ago, more randomness. I mean, why couldn't there be? It says now we have the Dread Beast stalks the floor. I did say I wanted bosses to appear on floors, like mini bosses to appear on floors. I did kind of get that. It's just not all the way there. Now I want to see goblins that wander and they just steal your palms and then try to run away and teleport. that's the next thing I want to see.
I don't know. The dread bosses are more like mega bosses.
That's true. They're harder than anything else that's in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I still, again, it's one of those things that there's just so much room to go in so many ways. And this way went that way. Like it went in some ways that are kind of interesting and other ways not. But then none of it really matters just because the mobs aren't threatening enough.
Yep.
It's kind of the end of it all.
I think that's pretty.
I do think they would multiply the damage of 2 by 2 and it would be better, like in every way. I don't even think it's a problem that's like that difficult. Like they just go in their code, man, and they take the attack damage value, multiply by 2, and I think the dungeon is much better already. Like it's really not much that's missing.
Maybe they'll do it. Like I said, maybe Savage. Yeah. Savage, double all damage. That's it. Maybe they add a modifier option and then an achievement to beat it with the modifiers on, and then one achievement to have every modifier on. Like perma fog of war, you can never see the layout of the floor. And stuff like that.
Oh, you're getting too Hades for this shit. No.
Why not?
No.
Come on, that's what it is.
No.
I mean, it's not, but it is at the same
No.
time. Listen, Sly, just because we've got good ideas and you don't agree with them doesn't mean they're bad ideas.
It doesn't mean they're good either.
It absolutely means they're good.
No.
Okay, if they did shit, okay, let's ask the professionals. If they did shit like that, where they could like hide the layout of the floor permanently, or there were goblins walking around that could steal your palms, but you could also kill them for rewards or choose to avoid them, was that
Hiding
better
the
or
layout
worse
of
for
the floor
you?
permanently, that's just you without a fucking sight. That's it.
Yeah, I think if they do add stuff like that, and it's something that we could put on as like options, it'd be pretty cool because for people that have been paying attention to the Deep Dungeon community, like Omni clears like Finn and Aurora and stuff, and Angelus, they kind of just have to make up their own challenges at this point. So having Square Enix actually give us the options within the game for some additional challenge would be definitely something that I think some of the higher tier deep dungeon runners might be interested in, depending on what those challenges actually end up being.
The number one thing I want is a seed generator, so two people can have the same exact seed and race against each other.
That'd be sick.
That's the number one thing that I want.
Yeah, that would be very cool. It's I guess it's supposedly possible. Apparently, if you queue in at the exact same time, you get the same seed. That's the rumor, or well, I don't know if it's a rumor. Or it's basically proven now in the deep dungeon community. But
Yeah, you get the same set. It's proven. Like if you go in the same set at the same second, I think, or same frame, you get the same layout and key placements, but the monsters are random, I think.
yeah, but good luck coordinating that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want more options for you guys because I think this content can go in so many interesting ways, and I want to see them do it because it's cool. It's content. Sly.
Yeah. It's our content. Took 5 years, but it's there.
Now time to go back to Palace. Anyway.
I mean, the biggest change we had before that was like when they buffed the potion to 30 seconds instead of 15, we were like, holy shit.
Dren and
UTD.
Rezo got so much better. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, we're at about time here, but before we wrap up, I want to give you a chance to share any thoughts that you may not have gotten out, something I may not have asked or you may not have answered. So, floor is yours for the next few minutes, and then we'll start signing off.
All right. So I get this question all the time. Like, which job is the best for EO? Like, EO is not structured the way you think it is if you've never been in EO. EO is like, you just learn the mechanics. And once you learn the mechanics, your favorite job is your best job, right? Unless you play healer. And if you play healer, you're going to sweat a little more. But if you're playing like a DPS or a tank, it's like everything's fine. And I think that's kind of the complaint we have, right? It's like everything... It doesn't matter what you play. If you've done it once, you've done it on everything. So like right now, I'm at 13 clears. No clears have been different. Like it's always the same thing. So like all the jobs are viable, kinda. So if that's your thing, like if you wanna, because that's the way EO is. That's the way you should approach it. EO is like you go on your favorite job and you just get it done. You get your title. So I would approach that content like that. If you want to clear multiple jobs, I would say this is where EO shows its bad colors. Clearing one job, it's fine. Clearing multiple jobs, very repetitive. So I would just... This is like by far the biggest difference between Evan and PUTD and EO. It's like PUTD and Evan, every job has its own tactics, its own plan, its own like strategies. EO is always the same, almost, for every job. So, and overall, I'm not disappointed. I'm not that disappointed. Disappointed with EO. I do wish it was more like the other two, but like, I'm still having fun. Now, am I going to have fun for as long as PUTD and High? I don't think there's any way. Like, it's just too repetitive. But it's still fun, especially if you don't plan on doing it like 100 times like us. And that's about all I have to say about EO on my side.
Yeah, I think for me, I don't have too much to add. Like I said at the start, I think Finn and I have kind of come to the same conclusions. We've seen the same things in the deep dungeon, but I think our like final opinion on whether or not that's actually a good thing or fun is pretty different in that sense. So I do think the lack of variety that comes from kind of a lack of importance in RNG and decision making kind of takes away a lot of the longevity that has the other deep dungeons has kind of been blessed with, basically. And to see that in a piece of content that we've waited 5 years for, and we're kind of expecting to have to play for another couple of years before we ever have a chance at a 4th deep dungeon, definitely it's a big disappointment, to say the least. So I think the hope is, going forward, even if there aren't any changes in this deep dungeon, that at least Square Enix would see what the solo community thinks of Deep Dungeon, and hopefully provide a better experience, and whether that's through the introduction of new things and trying to experiment, or if it's going back more to the roots of what were in the first 2 Deep Dungeons, I don't know. But hopefully in the future, some of our thoughts and opinions on these things are heard in terms of what we've seen in Eureka Orthos.
I think that's completely reasonable and fair. Well, with that, it's about time to let Finn get back to his solos, and Sig, whatever you got planned today. Finn's like, come on, I gotta get it. I gotta get number 14. Come on.
Man, the world first race is intense for the Omni. I thought this would be kind of like semi-casual, everyone going at their own pace. There's like 3 people above 9 clears already, and well, including me. And that it's just so consistent that like I do not expect them to fail a single run. So like I have to get this by Monday, or I'm gonna lose it, because we can get 2 clears per day.
Well, then let's get this wrapped up so you can get it done.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to it. Thank you, both of you, for taking the time to be on the show to talk about Eureka Orthos. Feel like we had a nice balanced discussion about the content, and hopefully they'll be hearing all the feedback that the Deep Dungeon community has. But shout out to the sponsors real quick. Thank you again, those on Patreon, for supporting. You don't have to, you choose to, because you don't get anything special out of it except a quick I love you, and apparently Ivy destroying my hand just because she's bored. That's about it. And thank you to our other sponsors, Steel Series and Advanced GG, for supporting as well. And with that, we'll allow our guests to sign off. Sig, where can everyone find you at? What are you working on right now?
Yep. So I can be found on Twitch at Sig9TV, the number 9, not spelled out. And I mean, over the next few months, you'll see me working through Eureka Orthos, probably work towards an Omni Clear eventually. But Deep Dungeon is really the only content I stream. And I'm sure at some point, people will see me back in Palace and Heaven on High as well. So that's where they can find me if they want to see a bit more of that content, for sure.
Thank you. And Finn?
Me, you can find me under Twitter, Twitch, YouTube under this name, Finn Bezal. Good luck spelling it, but it's FINHBEZAHL. Yeah, sorry, it's hard to pronounce letters when you're not and when it's not your first language. Anyway, so you can find me under these. So right now I'm doing for my Omni for EO. We're 13 out of 19. Hopefully I can get 2 clears per day and get it done by Monday. And then after that I will just score in EO, real score runs. And then that's what I stream most of the time. I stream Deep Dungeons, POTD, Heaven on High, EO, and a little bit of variety games, but mostly Deep Dungeon.
All right. Well, thank you, both of you, for taking your time again. Sly, what you got going on tonight? What you got going on this weekend?
You can find me at twitch.tv/Sly, aka Gray Fox. You can find me on Twitter at Sly the Fox. Tonight I will be DJing at Lore because Sina is out on holiday, I guess, enjoying his vacation. So I'll be DJing at Lore tonight. As far as like what I got coming up, of course, more Deep Dungeon group runs until we get the clear. Back on 11 next week is probably going to be the worst fucking day because I'm doing Treasures of Ottergon. Yay.
Why is that the worst? It's one of the better ones.
No. Yeah, that. Trails with the Sly is back because Trails to Azure is out, so I'll be doing that. Resident Evil out next week. So fun times had by all. Yay. Haps, what you up to? What's going on, man?
You can find me, Mr. Happy1227, everywhere. Just prepping a bunch of video content for the YubTubs, trying to stay ahead of that. Working on a deep dungeon guide, which is really just more of a general overview of all the most dangerous monsters and what the boss mechanics actually are. And that guide is looking like it's going to be roughly 1 hour long. Oh, boy. Yeah, that's going to be a fun after stream today. Other than that, back on Count Up, skipping a lot of stuff until then, finishing up Final Fantasy VIII Remastered, then probably getting to the incentive for a Final Fantasy VIII Randomizer, followed by Final Fantasy IX. And then I can move on from there after that. So that's going to be the next several months, is just counting up to Final Fantasy 16. Maybe throwing a Devil May Cry 5 playthrough at some point, just to get people familiar with what they can expect before 16 actually comes out. With that, we're going to wrap up. We already have our show for next week. It is going to be Sly.
It is going to be the ANZ Community Show.
There you go. And it's going to be a little later than usual because we don't want them to have to wake up at the worst times imaginable if, they don't have to. So we'll be on later in the afternoon next week. And I'm working on a show for April, but we now know we have a live letter show because the live letter was announced for March 31st. So we have that in a couple of weeks as well. So we're rolling into the 6.4 news territory at this point. So everyone,
yeah, boy,
hold on to your butts. But with that, we've kept Finn long enough from his solo. So we'll go into the post show and he can leave as soon as he's able, so he can get back to going. Thank you again, both of you, for coming, and we will see all of you.
Thank you so much
next week for the ANZ Community Show. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you then. Until then, bye bye.
See you next week.